Into the rift. The road stretched out before me, long and dusty, twisting east from Bankarai's golden hills into the wild borderlands of the Reach in Skyrim. Afternoon light slanted low through the haze, casting our shadows long and lean across the ground. I rode my chestnut and white pinto mare, her ears flicking at every sound. She seemed steadier than I felt in that moment. Beside me, Claudia rode with that effortless ease she always had. One leg hooked lazily over Streak's saddle horn. The striped Mustang moved as if it understood every unspoken command. A creature of instinct and will. Claudia looked the part of a warden, broad-shouldered and confident, a woman who trusted steel and instinct as naturally as breathing. Behind us, Rizak's opus clicked inward, the faint blue gleam of its core painting the shadowed edges of the road. Every so often it darted ahead, scanning the terrain like a vigilant hound before circling back again. I could hear the tiny pulse of its mechanical heart echoing faintly, a quiet reminder that I wasn't entirely alone. For a while, neither of us spoke, just tough beats, the wind, and the distant call of a hawk. But Claudia had known me long enough to read my moods. "You've been quiet since Evermore," she said finally, tone half gentle, half prying. "That kind of silence usually means you're overthinking something." I let out a soft hum, keeping my gaze on the winding trail ahead. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm chasing ghosts. Claudia arched a brow. "You mean the Shadow Sage, Thalanor?" I hesitated, heat rising to my cheeks. What if he doesn't exist? Or worse, what if he does, and I'm not what he's looking for? Claudia chuckled, low and steady. "So, you don't fear the darkness. You fear being turned away from it." I swallowed, thoughts drifting to Nimistra. My younger sister had been away at Apothrica for months, learning the ways of the Arcanist. I was proud. She was fearless, gifted, brilliant, but I couldn't help feel a spotlight on my own inadequacy and lack of direction. Watching her grow into someone so capable only reminded me of how hesitant I had been to pursue my own path. I let a small, crooked smile tug at my lips, though my voice stayed quiet. "Something like that. I've never been the strongest, or the quickest. My alchemy gives me some control, and my daggers, well, they give me a way to strike, but it feels hollow, like I'm missing something. Maybe I thought the shadows could balance that, or maybe..." I trailed off, eyes distant. Maybe I just want to find my own path. The rhythm of our mount's hooves filled the space between words. Finally, Claudia's voice broke the quiet. You've never been helpless, Saren. You're clever, stubborn, and you think before you strike. The shadows won't care about your doubts. They'll care that you keep walking toward them. I gave a small laugh, soft but real. Like when we were children, crawling through Dwemer ruins we had no right to be in. Claudia snorted. You mean when you convinced me the spiders were dormant, and I ended up knee-deep in oil, swinging at everything that moved? I laughed again, the tension easing from my shoulders. You said you meant to tame them. And I still could have, she replied with a grin, if you hadn't run screaming first. The road stretched on, quiet now, the landscape shifting as the air grew colder, sharper. Pines thickened on the slopes ahead, their shadows stretching long in the fading light. By the time we reached Iverstead at the rift's western border, the sun had slipped behind the peaks, bruising the sky with purple and gold. Claudia drew streaks to a stop. There's an inn just over the bridge to the north. This is where I turn south. Cyrodiil awaits, Claudia said, eyes fixed on the winding road ahead. The rift is all yours from here. I felt a lump in my throat, the weight of the moment pressing down. The end of one road, the beginning of another. My voice came out quieter than I meant. Thank you for Rizak's wheel, and for everything that came before it. Watch yourself in the war. We still have future adventures to chase. She reached across the small gap between our horses and clasped my forearm, her grip firm and grounding. Of course, Saren. And remember, when the shadows feel too deep, the moons will always find you. I let her words settle, feeling the warmth of her certainty seep into me. My gaze lingered on her as she turned her mount, heading south along the ridge. I watched until she became nothing more than a dark speck against the bruised twilight. Rizak's opus chirped, the sound metallic yet warm, circling my mare as if to remind me that I wasn't entirely alone. I nudged my mare toward the bridge leading to the Pilgrim's Rest Inn, almost reluctant to take a rest. I thought of Nemistra again, so far away in Apothrica, and a pang of longing mixed with resolve. If my sister could face the arcane mysteries with courage, then maybe, just maybe, I could face the shadows waiting for me. The path was uncertain, the questions unending, but for the first time, I felt a quiet certainty stirring in my chest. Rizak's opus clicked beside me, reminding me to stay in the present. And so I rode, chest tight with hope and fear both, into the unknown, carrying the echoes of Dwemer halls, whispered legends, and the steady hum of a mechanical heart at my side. The path ahead was uncertain, yes, but for the first time, I at least had a heading. Pilgrim's Rest. The stone steps groaned under my boots as I climbed toward the Pilgrim's Rest Inn, its timbered walls steeped in Skyrim's old ways. I wasn't sure I could rest. Not yet. But my horse needed it, and I had never set foot in these northern lands. I clutched at a fragile hope that someone here might have a map, or at least point me towards old Misfield Manor. Somewhere, somehow, I had to find it. Every step felt heavier than the last, the weight of uncertainty pressing against my chest. How could I face a place I'd never seen, chasing an elf who might not even exist? I straightened my effects, my fingers brushing the satchel that held my journal, my alchemy notes, and the few tools that gave me a sense of control. Opus skittered through the fallen leaves beside me, the soft clinks and whirs of its brass joints grounding me. Even its mechanical presence felt steadier than I had ever felt in myself. I paused to glance at the low plants peeking through the forest floor. Small, delicate herbs with frost-tipped leaves, and blooms that glimmered faintly in the mist. Each one whispered possibilities, potions, poultices, elixirs. For a fleeting moment, the world felt less vast, less impossible. I exhaled and pushed open the heavy door, letting the warmth wash over me. Opus entered next to me, its sounds unique compared to the rest. A bard's lute hummed softly, weaving through the scent of spiced meat and roasting meat. I barely had time to take it all in before a voice hit me like a bell. Welcome to the Pilgrim's Rest Inn, best inn in all of Iverstead. The Nord's voice boomed, full of laughter and energy. I must have looked as wide-eyed as a draugr at dawn. By shore, you've an interesting friend. His gaze flicked to Opus, curiosity bright in his eyes. It's not going to dig a hole in my wall, is it? He laughed, his red braids catching in the lamplight. I wouldn't think so, I said hesitantly, not expecting the energy or question posed. Wonderful. Name's Yngvild. What brings you here? His voice was theatric, but not overdone. I edged closer to the counter, careful to keep my words between Yngvild and I. My throat felt tight, and even as I spoke, the sound of my own voice seemed foreign. I'm looking for an elf. Dalinor. I heard he might be at old Misfield Manor. The words hung in the air, and for a moment I wondered if I had the right to say them, or if I even deserved to find him. My hand twitched against the satchel at my side. fingers brushing the edges as if seeking courage from the familiar weight of my journal. Ingvild's eyes softened with amusement, though his brows knit in thought. Dalinor, eh? Well, I can't say I've seen him, but rumors linger. There's a chance. Old Misfield Manor, yes, near Riften. Make it to Riften, and someone there ought to know. Ever been? I shook my head, swallowing the lump in my throat. I haven't. I drew my journal from my satchel, eager to record anything that may guide me forward. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. You'll head south from here, cross the bridge, and follow the path east. At the fork, you can go north or south. The north route is more remote. When you reach Shore's Stone, Riften's just south. The south route leads to Nimalton, less charming than Iverstead, but with its own stories. Follow the water, find Scald's Retreat, then the road bends north. Riften isn't far after that. I scribbled it all down, the scratch of quill on paper somehow steadying my racing thoughts. Thank you, Ingvid. Truly, I murmured, hoping he sensed the gratitude in my voice. No trouble at all. And you'll rest here tonight, yes? He gestured theatrically, arms wide. Or do you plan to wander the night instead? I let a small, shaky smile form. A rest would be welcome. Thank you. He led me up the creaking wood stairs to a simple room on the second floor, the smell of pine and warm hearth smoke lingering faintly in the air. Sunlight spilled through the small window, dust motes drifting lazily in its golden beam. You have your pick tonight, Ingvild said with a grin. Not many travelers braving the roads this evening. I stepped inside, the floorboards groaning softly beneath my boots. The beds were plain but inviting, their linen neatly folded, empty except for the quiet promise of rest. Rizek's opus scuttled ahead, breast legs clicking against the floor, tapping at corners and sniffing at shadows, as if cataloging the room for hidden secrets. Ingvild lingered at the doorway, his shadow stretching across the floor. Shout if you need anything, he called, his voice fading into the low hum of the inn. I let out a slow breath, the warmth of the room a stark contrast to the chill outside. Opus paused near the window, its soft whir of gears a comforting rhythm, grounding me in the stillness. I settled on one of the empty beds, sat cross-legged, and pulled my journal onto my lap. My fingers traced the edges of the parchment as if it could anchor my scattered thoughts. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying distant bird calls and the faint murmur of a river. I wrote slowly, reviewing notes from past alchemical experiments, reminders of ingredients I hoped to find in the rift. Each word I traced onto the page felt like a tether to a part of myself I'd often neglected, the part that thought, observed, and quietly measured the world before acting. For the first time in days, I allowed myself a small sigh. The road ahead was uncertain. Thalinor's presence, the shadows I would soon face. They felt distant, yet inevitable. But here, in this quiet room, with Opus softly clicking beside me, I let the tension ease, if only for a moment. My mind could wander, my hands could work, and the restless beat of the journey could slow. Though sleep still seemed far, I felt a fragile sense of readiness bloom within me, a quiet certainty that the path I sought, through shadow and stone, was waiting, and I would walk it, one deliberate step at a time. For the first time since leaving Evermore, I allowed myself a fragile hope. I might not be strong, I might not be fearless, but I could take the next step, and perhaps, just perhaps, the shadows and the secrets hidden among the rift's herbs would not swallow me if I dared walk toward them. The Watcher on the Road. The rift's air was sharp with pine and mist, clinging to my cloak and carrying the scent of damp earth. I paused at the bend of an overgrown trail, my journal open in my hand, eyes flickering between the inked lines and the shadowed ridges of the mountains ahead. My fingers trembled slightly on the parchment, whether from cold or nerves, I couldn't tell. I let the journal fall closed, dropping my arms to my sides. I hadn't even made it to Riften. The task felt impossibly far, and the instructions seemed meaningless in my hands. I cursed my own foolishness. Silly, naive, thinking I could do this. I had never been very good at following instructions, or maps, or anything that asked for steady precision, despite how much I had tried. A soft click and whir caught my attention. Opus moved around my boots, joints gleaming faintly, the steady hum of its core grounding me. The little spider tapped a foreleg against the earth, as if testing the trail for me. I bent down, brushing its shell gently. Its presence reminded me that I wasn't entirely alone, that I had skills, that I had survived far stranger challenges. A tiny spark of resolve stirred in my chest. Perhaps I wasn't ready yet. Perhaps the shadows I sought were deeper than I imagined. But I would keep moving. One careful step, one inked line, one turn of the trail at a time. I lifted my journal, looking again at my notes. I murmured to myself, lips barely moving. If the river cuts east here, then Riften should... Lost, are you? The voice came sudden and close, I nearly dropped my journal. I spun to see a man leaning against a pine trunk, half-shadowed, as if grown from the forest itself. Human, weathered, practical in dress, his eyes calm but sharp, studying me like a hunter. Opus clicked sharply, the glow of its core brightening. "You startled me," I admitted, tucking the journal back into my satchel. The man's gaze flicked to Opus, lips twitching faintly. Strange company for a traveler. I kept my eyes on him, heart thudding. I'm looking for someone. A Nightblade. Thalanor. I tried not to let my nerves come through my voice. His expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed. "And what makes you think you're meant to find him?" he asked me. I hesitated, then let the truth fall out quietly. "I don't know that I am, but I would like a chance to ask him all the same. If he turns me away, so be it. But if there's even a sliver of a chance, I have to follow it." The doubt hit me then, sharp and familiar. Claudia had strength in her bones, certainty in her stride. I had alchemy and daggers, tools, not confidence. What if the shadows asked more of me than I had to give? What if I wasn't meant for any of this at all? He said nothing for a long moment, simply watching me, as if weighing my worth. Then he nodded once. "You've come further than most," he said finally. "And you speak plainly, which is rare. Old Misfield Manor sits just beyond that ridge." He gestured past the bend, eyes still on me. "But don't knock on his door yet. You'll find no welcome that way." My brow furrowed. Then how?" "2 nights." He cut me off. "At sunset, return here. If he's agreed, I'll take you to him. If not, best you keep walking." He paused, glancing back. "Patience is the first lesson. Learn it now," he said as he vanished. No footsteps, no branch snap, no farewell. Just gone, swallowed by the tree line as if the forest had always owned him. I lingered long after, fingers tight around my satchel. My breath came in small clouds, fleeting proofs that I still existed in the cold silence he left behind. Doubt curled its claws into me, sharp, insistent, but beneath it lived something quieter, steadier. Possibility, maybe even courage. I rested my hand on Opus's humming shell. 2 nights, I whispered to myself and the little spider. Opus tapped my wrist with a delicate limb, as if sealing a promise. My daggers felt lighter on my hips. No longer dead weight, but witnesses, partners in whatever waited ahead. "I can't lose my way, Opus," I murmured, meeting its glowing core with a mix of resolve and desperation. He's real. Thalanor is real. The name felt like a myth spoken too loudly, a truth too fragile to touch. The Shadow Sage existed. 2 nights now stretched before me, wide, immense, a space where anything could happen, or nothing at all. Time itself felt like a path I could slip from if I wasn't careful. What if I faltered? What if I strayed? I studied the forest around me, committing every trunk, every crooked branch, every fold of shadow to memory, as though the world might shift if I dared to look away. Riften still waited somewhere ahead, but perhaps it didn't matter. Perhaps the forest was my crossroads. Perhaps the night itself would be my guide. Moonlight sifted through the mist-draped pines, turning the clearing silver, otherworldly, expectant. A shiver ran through me, not from fear, but from the uncanny certainty that the moment he'd return, if he returned, would divide my life into before and after. And so I stood beneath the pale glow, opus warm against my wrist, the world holding its breath with me, waiting for the first night to begin. The dream of shadows. I chose to camp there, right there, because I couldn't risk losing the spot. The trees all look the same in the rift's autumn forest, gold layered over gold, pines whispering in the wind, shadows pooling where the moonlight didn't reach. If I wandered too far, if I miscounted the bends in the path, or let doubt sway my steps, I'd never find this place again. And if I lost it, I lost everything. My chance to meet Thalanor, my chance to understand the shadows that had called me for years. So I stayed. I built a small fire, pulled my cloak close, and let the night hold me. Opus scuttled in circles nearby, humming as it inspected every moss patch and pebble like an enthusiastic little scholar. Its noises were oddly comforting, steady, rhythmic, familiar. Eventually, exhaustion tugged at me, and sleep won. The dream rose instantly. I stood in a hall carved from endless stone. Runes pulsed along the walls, each beat syncing with my heartbeat. Shadows stretched long across the floor, waiting, expectant. When I lifted my hand, they answered. They wrapped around my limbs, weightless and obedient. With a thought, I vanished, reappearing in a whisper of darkness. My steps were soundless, my breath steadied. For the first time in my life, power thrummed through me without hesitation. Pure, sharp, whole. I shaped a blade from darkness itself. I spun shadows into a shield. I felt untouchable. But then the shadows shifted. Their edges grew jagged, their touch suffocating. They climbed my throat, my jaw, tightening as I tried to command them. My voice failed. My will dissolved. Darkness poured into me like water, into my lungs, into my eyes, into everything I was. The power that moments ago felt like flight now dragged me into crushing black. I tried to scream, only silence answered. I jerked awake with a gasp, heart hammering. Moonlight spilled across the clearing. The fire was a bed of dim embers, and for a breathless few seconds, I couldn't tell if the shadows around me were real or still clinging from the dream. A soft chirr pulled me back. Opus turned its lantern-like eyes toward me and tapped my hand gently. Warm, steady light pulsed from its core. My breath slowly evened. I'm still here, I whispered to both of us. Still me. The dream's terror clung to my skin, but beneath it, buried deep, was something else. Possibility, danger, a lesson. As the first hints of dawn brushed the treetops gold, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had to meet Thalanor. Not to chase the shadows, but to master them before they consumed me. I didn't sleep the second night. Even without dreams pressing at my throat, the memory of that shadowed hall lingered at the edges of my vision every time I blinked. So instead of trying to rest, I threw myself into the one thing that had always steadied my hands: alchemy. Before full night came, I foraged the forest for ingredients. The rift was generous in its strange autumn-lit way. I found patches of mountain flowers, crimson, blue, and purples. Scaly foliota clung between the fallen birch logs. Their golden caps warmed to the touch. Lavender scented the path, sweet and sharp. Near the water's edge, I gathered whitecaps nestled in the damp soil, and pried Nordic barnacles from beneath the water's surface. And tucked beneath a decaying stump, growing exactly where the old guides claimed they would, I spotted a cluster of wild gourds, rare and oddly comforting. My satchel grew heavy with possibilities. Back at camp, I coaxed a fire from dry pine and let it settle into a low glow. Opus perched beside me, humming as it polished one of its legs with endearing intensity. I arranged my reagents, letting Maser and Secunda spill their silver blue light across my workspace. I remembered how moonlight had shifted mixtures back in Balmora, how reagents seemed to hum differently under celestial eyes. Tonight, I tested them again. I crushed a sprig of crimson nirnroot against frost salt. The mixture glowed pink in the firelight, but when I lifted it under Masser's glow, it shifted into a soft violet, pulsing faintly. Beautiful, I breathed, scribbling notes in my journal. Next came a drop of columbine tincture over powdered void salts, crackling softly, then a sliver of scaly falliota, dried over flame and cooled beneath Secunda's pale touch. Each mixture changed in subtle ways, as though the moons nudged the ingredients into harmonies unseen in daylight. Opus clattered closer and tapped the parchment. Yes, yes, I murmured, smiling. I'll write everything down, I promise. The hours passed quietly. No fear, no shadows pressing at me. Only the soft rhythm of work, discovery, and the spider's gentle hum. When dawn finally brushed pale gold across the treetops, I had a small collection of lunar-kissed vials and ink-smudged notes ready to pack away. Tonight, I may meet Thalanor, the shadows, the unknown. But overnight, I had claimed something small but certain. Even darkness can be studied, understood, turned into light, if I meet it with steady hands and a curious heart. Where darkness awaits. Sunset came cold and colorless, shadows drifting through the pines like half-formed thoughts. I had packed my things while the sun was still high in the sky. Satchel buckled, cloak clasped, Opus standing alert beside me. But still I waited. I kept scanning the tree line, afraid that if I blinked too long, I might miss him. The strange man who had found me on the trail and promised he would return. 2 nights I'd stayed in this clearing, afraid to wander too far and lose the one chance I had to meet Thalanor. Every crack of a branch, every rustle of wind set my heart racing. What if he didn't return? What if Thalanor never agreed? What if this was all some foolish dream? Opus tapped my boot with a tiny metal leg, a reminder to breathe. You're prepared. The man seemed to appear out of nothing, just as before. Good. Thalanor has agreed to see you. I almost forgot how to breathe. Thalanor agreed? He didn't answer with words. He simply turned and started walking. I followed. The track to old Misfield Manor unfolded beneath a bleeding sunset, the sky shifting from ember gold to deep violet as the light thinned between the trees. Shadows pooled early among the trunks, stretching long and quiet across our path. The human who had come for me walked ahead with steady confidence. but each step I took felt heavier, full of questions he hadn't answered, and hopes I barely dared hold. Would Thalonor truly be there? Had I earned even the chance to stand before him? As we crested a low rise, Riften flickered into view behind us, its warm lantern light shimmering through the dark like a distant hearth. Yet, strangely, as soon as I looked toward it, it felt farther away than it was, as though something in the growing dusk drew my eyes forward instead. Then I saw it. Old Misfield Manor settled into the tree line like a shadow pretending to be a house. Close enough to Riften that the city's life should have touched it, yet somehow completely untouched, unnoticed. Its stone walls were soft with darkness, its windows unlit, absorbing the last of the day rather than reflecting it. It wasn't a ruin. It wasn't a fortress. It was something quieter, older, a place you could pass 1,000 times without ever seeing unless you were meant to. A slow, involuntary chill slid across my skin. Not fear, recognition, as though the manor itself had simply been waiting for me to finally look. "This is as far as I go," the man said quietly. "Thalonor awaits inside." Before I could thank him, he had vanished into the tree line, leaving Opus and I alone before the door. I swallowed, steadied myself, and hesitantly moved forward. I paused at the tall stone fence, my hand resting on the wooden gate just long enough to feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. A moment ago, the last sliver of sun still clung to the treetops. And yet, standing here, the world felt suddenly and impossibly dim, as if the light hadn't faded naturally, but had been swallowed the instant I approached. Old Misfield Manor exhaled a quiet kind of darkness, not menacing, but deliberate. A shadow set beside Riften's glow, close enough that the city's lanterns should have brushed its stones, yet somehow untouched by them, hidden in plain sight, overlooked by all who weren't meant to find it. I pushed the wooden gate open, its hinges groaning in protest. Beyond it, a modest courtyard unfurled, stone paths framed by frost-tipped grass, a few sturdy lanterns left unlit, and the quiet silhouette of a stable in the corner. And at its heart stood the manor itself, a grand Nord-style estate of layered stone and timber, with broad halls and multiple levels rising into the deepening dusk. Its presence was heavy but not hostile, as though it watched rather than welcomed. I swallowed hard. I had waited, and the human had returned for me. That meant I was meant to be here. Still, I stood at the threshold a heartbeat longer, letting the weight of the place settle over me, letting the darkness test my resolve. If the people of Riften ever noticed this place, I couldn't imagine how. It felt hidden in plain sight, a shadow beside a lantern's glow. It was in that shadow I now stood, and in it Thalinor Conneril waited. I stepped forward, hesitant, knowing forward was the only option.